Good afternoon, everybody. A Yankees pitcher forgets who daddy is. Speaking of daddies, Big Papi, he's ready to award a mega deal to one Astros player. And hey, did you know that the only guy who served any sort of suspension for Boston's 2018 sign stealing scandal now works for the Dodgers? I'd say you can't script this stuff, but Arian Foster would disagree. It's episode 9 of Stone Cold Stros, and it starts right now.
The Houston Astros, world champions!
Welcome into Stone Cold Stros. I'm Brandon Strange, the wise man in the middle of Sports Map Houston senior content contributor Charlie Polillo. You can follow him on Twitter at Polillo and read him weekly on sportsmap.com. The guy that edits that column is sportsmap.com editor Josh Jordan. Follow him on Twitter at JoshJordan975. And besides all the written and video work he does, you can listen to him Sundays on his show Moneyline on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5 FM. Gentlemen, Charlie, Josh, welcome in.
Welcome to you, gentlemen.
What is up?
Appreciate it. Well, guys, before we get going here, just want to, for our live audience that's making their way in, just want to say welcome in and make sure you interact with us in the chat. We'll feature some of those favorite messages on screen. Do us a solid, like this video right now. And if you are a Stone Cold Stros virgin, we do this podcast live at 3 p.m. every Monday here on YouTube. The audio version goes up Monday night. So if you prefer listening, just search Stone Cold Stros on your favorite podcast provider like Apple or Spotify. And while you're there, give us a sub and subscribe. Right? Consider giving us a 5-star rating. You can follow our parent channel, Sports Map Houston, on all your favorite social platforms like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and of course, right here on YouTube. Just search at Sports Map HOU. Gentlemen, let's get right into it. Enough of me blabbing in my mouth. Another week, another guy writes a book using the Astros for sizzle. This time, it's former Astros beat writer for The Athletic, Evan Drellich. His book is called Winning Fixes Everything: How Baseball's Brightest Mind Creates the Sport's Biggest Mess. Do we have a card for that on screen? There we go. And so that's Evan Drellich, and that's his, I think, high school level graphics design team that made the cover for his book, which, you know, kind of fits into the criteria, all this, because this is the lowest of low hanging fruit as far as MLB headlines, especially in February. The book releases on Valentine's Day. The early promotional excerpts are making the rounds in sports media. A lot of it focuses on quotes for really unnamed or unsourced quotes about or from Alex Cora, from players on the Red Sox team, saying that he was brazen in his complicity and pride in the 2017 Astro sign stealing scandal. Cora was overheard as saying, quote, "We stole that bleeping World Series." Guys, what do you think about round 500 of Astros Were Naughty in 2017?
Is it just me, or am I just getting a sense you won't be buying the book?
I won't have to. I think I'm getting the meaty parts right now, right?
I am curious, even in Boston, New York, Los Angeles, at what point does fatigue of all this set in, right? This is the 2023 season we're approaching. Alas, we're still more than 7 weeks from it beginning, so you have to kill a little time one way or another. The occasional revelation and the latest ooh-ah quote, okay. But those vaporize largely into the ether at this point. There's not going to be any renewed or further investigation. So, hey, all power to the author writing a book and trying to sell books. I just think at this point, the overall reaction is, and for audio only, I just shrugged.
For me, it's the stuff in the Boston Herald about Cora and him blowing up and having fights with AJ Hinch, and Jeff Blum gets in on this. This is the stuff I found really interesting because, I mean, almost every outlet has some version of this article, but the one on the Boston Herald, I found Cora allegedly drinking too much, had it out with Jeff Blum. Basically, Cora turned the music up while they were on the team bus, and the guys were trying to call their family after Hurricane Harvey, and Jeff Blum had a problem with it. Like, hey, we're trying to make some phone calls, turn the music down. They get in a big fight. According to the Boston Herald, he says, he's your buddy. You want him to be your bench coach, being Blum. You don't trust me. Cora reportedly told Hinch after the bus fight, it's been like this all year long. So we heard about the AJ Hinch smashing the monitors. We've heard those reports. Looks like him and Cora, they did not get along. And Cora claims that them fighting actually made their relationship a little stronger. But AJ reportedly told some colleagues that, that they should have fired him a long time ago, but he's doing too good of a job. And guys like Beltran and Bregman got along with him too well. They didn't want to make any moves. So this is all the stuff where I'm really interested in. All the World Series stuff feels kind of old hat to me. But hearing that Jeff Blum is in the mix here with Cora and AJ Hinch was really surprising to me.
Well, obviously, it can take a while for stories to surface, right? The whole scandal didn't blow up until post 2019 or in the postseason of 2019. But you'd think if the manager and his bench coach were at each other's throat and coexisting barely, they got a scintilla of that, something along the way. But if a little spice, a little mutual feistiness benefited the cause, I mean, there are a lot of bells that can't be unrung through this whole saga. And the most important one is the Astros won the 2017 World Series. So if Alex Cora and AJ Hinch didn't have a celebratory hug or keep each other on Christmas card lists after Cora went to the Red Sox, oh, well.
I think it's going to be really tough for people, especially in Boston, I think, to take a hard stance on this without being hypocritical, because a lot of the fans and media rationalized Cora's rehiring in 2021 by painting Cora out to be a guy that had just been, this had all been pinned on him by Astros players who really didn't want to take blame. He was kind of the fall guy. And here's him allegedly quoted, which, by the way, that's something this book has in common with Andy Martino's book, which is a ton of quotes that are, from unnamed players that were interviewed for this. And so here's these quotes where he's admitting to all these things in which the fans and media in Boston had kind of downplayed. And I think people who, wanted to believe the Astros were the big bad wolf, wanted to downplay. And I guess I shouldn't begrudge either Martino or Drellich for not being able to get anyone to go on record with these quotes, because Manfred didn't get anyone to go on record except for the Astros, who stupidly self-snitched. And once Boston saw what the repercussions were for what the Astros did and understood that there was no immunity deal because they already had immunity under the CBA. But I think the funniest part is the quotes by people on that team supposedly dumbfounded by Cora's admission, saying, quote, "We didn't even know what he was talking about," when he was saying how, they knew what the pitches were before they'd even called them. And I'm like, you didn't? Because literally your team was found guilty of doing the same thing in 2018, except instead of, in that situation, there really was a fall guy, which was JT Watkins. And for those that don't know, he was the video room guy in Boston who they pinned the entire scandal on when the investigation went down. He got suspended in 2020 without pay, air quotes. And then after MLB's investigation, they next year, he serves his suspension in 2021, gets rehired and promoted by Boston. The book reveals he was supposedly receiving money under the table because, quote, "we know what that guy did for us." You know where he works now, guys? I alluded it to in the cold open. He works with the Dodgers. So the guys who hire, people straight out of this sign stealing stuff, the Yankees get Marwin, the Boston rehires Cora. I'm forgetting. Oh yeah, Beltran. Beltran came over as a broadcaster for the Yes Network, and even looking at Springer going to Toronto certainly absolves him of his part in that I just think there's just so much hypocrisy to go around. But at the end of the day, this doesn't even really move the needle for me because we're just so far removed from all of this, and the punishment just don't even really care anymore.
Well, that's certainly where I am. Look, the forever record will include that the Astros cheated and they were the most accomplished at it, maybe with their system, but certainly in winning the World Series. Direct cause and effect, no, you cannot prove causation on that to whatever extent it did help them or help individual players. But at some point, it's just where's that's all folks part.
Yeah. And I think the other part of it is every time the Astros would lose a series or a game or Altuve would have a batted bat, everyone would say, oh, it's a lot harder when you don't know what pitch is coming.
Oral Hershiser famously at a Dodgers telecast did some of that.
Sure. And look, the Astros are going to take their flog, and I understand that. But on the flip side of that, who is a better case study of that than the Boston Red Sox, who have been perennial basement dwellers since 2018, in which the year in which they are implicated and served some sort of punishment for sign stealing. They've, outside of that ALCS run, they've been very, very quiet. They've been terrible, as a matter of fact. So that is your ultimate example of, if you don't know, the Astros have been 6 straight ALCSs, blah, 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 blah. I can't. I just can't. Josh, you got anything to add on it? Because I can't. I'm done. I can't.
Well, I mean, I just want to point out, like, Bill Plaschke's article about how he got skewered for suggesting that the Dodgers go after Carlos Correa because of the scandal, but they go hire the video room guy from the Red Sox to work for them. I mean, the hypocrisy is ridiculous. One final quote I thought was so great. It was basically the Cora thing with Hinch and them arguing. This is the final one. It says he blew up one day in the coach's office with AJ and said, "You expect me to do all this stuff for $250,000? And you know, all the other coaches are making like 75 grand. I'm not quite sure what that back half of the statement means, but it's just funny to me. Cora blowing up that the 250 grand was not enough for what they were asking him to do coaching wise. I thought that was really strange.
Well, if the attributed Cora stuff is true, whether small man syndrome, did he then get in his little red Corvette that he just bought and drove home? Right, he was a fringe player as a major leaguer, never a good everyday major leaguer. But look, hey, he carved out a 10-year career and so forth. But if he's running around saying we stole the World Series, that is denigrating every player who actually was a part of winning that World Series. And if there was chicanery involved in the World Series, so be it. But for Alex Cora to be puffing his chest out, taking credit essentially for winning the World Series, that's a guy who was due his comeuppance and needed to get over himself a little bit. And anyone want to take the other side of the bet that first media availability of Red Sox spring training, Alex Cora will go, we're just looking forward to the 2023 season. That's all in the past.
Yeah. And this narrative goes along too with the AJ Hinch maybe just wasn't strong-handed enough, where we have this quote saying that he should have fired Cora a long time ago.
Oh, he was Fredo. There's this on this subject, Godfather reference, which obviously you guys get, but for anyone who might not, just look up Fredo Corleone, and that was AJ through this. I wanted to stop it, but I couldn't. I broke a TV or two, but I just couldn't. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. And Alex Cora was mean to me.
Yep. Bingo.
Yeah. I think, there's still the business of attributing this attribution to unnamed players for these quotes. So there's still that business too, which, hey man, I can write a whole book and not source, or give you any or sort of attributions to it. And just write a great book. Again, Martino and Drellich have done the same thing, which is they've gone and interviewed a bunch of players. They provide the quotes, but no one wants to put their name on it except for the authors, who are going to stick their hands out and say, money, please. And it's just, like I said at the beginning, it's the lowest of low-hanging fruit for MLB media. It's the only story. I mean, we look at these stupid lists of MLB Network and we'll get to one of those later. But it's just, outside of creating stupid lists that people are going to react to, Astros sign stealing is literally the only other thing that moves the needle in the offseason for these guys. And it's the only thing they can do. So I understand it a little bit. And obviously we're talking about it, so it's working. But it is the second week in a row in which we're leading off talking about someone who's, sullying the Astros name for the sake of making a buck. And it won't be the last. Hopefully it'll be the last consecutive, but it won't be the last time in which we have to talk about someone, making money off of the Astros reputation. And, one of the other commenters pointed out, obviously this was not, what happened in 2018 was not their first time. They got dinged in 2017 for the Apple Watch stuff. And obviously we know what the Yankees were implicated in as well, using dugout phones. So there's just a lot of regurgitation of the same old talking points, the same old stuff. At this point, I don't even know. Do you guys think that this has a lot less traction to it this time? I mean, obviously the media outlets have picked up on it because it's the news cycle, but do you guys feel like this is outside of maybe Dodgers fans, maybe this gets them in a fervor, but I just don't really feel like there's a lot of heat around this time around.
Societal attention spans have never been shorter, period. So in the TikTok era, I just can't believe there's much appetite for more on this other than a specific revelation or quote here or there. But a rehash, a retelling of the tale, unless there's an amazing journalistic breakthrough in new information, I defer to my earlier shrug.
Yeah, the only part that bothers me is you see, Yankee and Dodger fans in the comments of these articles saying like, see, now we have proof. He admitted it. They stole the World Series. Based on this, we should be able to go back in the record books and based off of some quote that Cora allegedly said, that's your proof.
While he was drunk.
While he was drunk, that's your proof that they stole it and they wouldn't have won it otherwise. Look, we'll never really know how that would have played out. If there was no sign stealing. And in my opinion, I think the Dodgers are doing some of that too. That's something we should bring up. This book is supposed to also talk about some of the things the Yankees and the Dodgers were doing, where they were doing some of this stuff too. But of course, that's not the splashy headlines and quotes we're seeing right now. You're going to have to get that book on, Valentine's Day? And check that out, Brandon. So enjoy that reading.
Hard pass, I imagine. The one thing we should acknowledge, look, if the roles had been reversed, and the Yankees had done what the Astros did do or perceived to have done, and the Yankees beat the Astros and went on to win the World Series, and it all came to light, Astros fans would be screaming holy hell about the whole thing. That's just the nature of the beast, on which side is your bread buttered. But the reality is it's the Astros who won that World Series and took down, tentpole franchises every step of the way, and that's never going to be changed.
I'm going to take exception to Michael H here, as you guys aren't helping it go away by leading up the broadcast with it. That is true, but also we're not just taking it at face value and running with the narrative. We're also kind of poking holes in it just slightly, for the sake of the hometown team. We talked about Beltran a little bit, and from one NL East team to the next, we don't have to spend a whole lot of time on this, but I thought, easy kind of a transition because of what we were talking about here. Carlos Beltran it was announced over the weekend that he's leaving the Yes Network to join the Mets front office. So, this is just kind of adjacent, not really a big deal, but you guys have any thoughts on Carlos Beltran leaving the Yes Network?
Well, he was bad at the job.
Yeah.
Now, look, it was his first year, so to be thrust in at that kind of high-profile role, the Yankees actually hired a couple of Astros World Series champions, Cameron Maybin, who was let go by Yes, and now Beltran. Interesting that he goes to the Mets front office. The fallout, he'd been hired to be their manager, never managed a game. Buck Showalter, I think, is quite secure in his position, so he won't be looking over his shoulder. But I wouldn't find it beyond the pale that the next manager of the New York Mets 2-3 years from now, and Steve Cohen's untested, right? Daddy Warbucks owner, and with everything else that he's done this offseason, If they don't win it and Buck Showalter's in his mid to late 60s, maybe Beltran winds up their manager sooner than later. But Carlos, he just seemed uncomfortable, and he was given too high profile a role too quickly. The man does know his baseball, and we'll see what he can contribute to the Mets.
Yeah, I just find it interesting that so many of the people we know involved in all the sign stealing stuff and how bad it was, they've all found other jobs. In, AJ Hinch is managing a ball club, and so is Cora, and now Carlos Beltran's going into the front office. Obviously, we didn't have too big a problem with all this cheating if these guys are just allowed to come back in positions of power and run teams to some extent.
Maybe Beltran thought that he was going to the Yes Network to relay signs from the booth, and he found out they really want him to just call games, and that's just not his forte. I saw one commenter on social media say that he's like, well, hey, AJ Hinch and Alex Cora are coaching, so he didn't understand why Beltran was singled out. I guess that's like reason number 8,007 that, people who comment on this stuff do not read and did not read MLB's report. There's a reason why Beltran was singled out, and that's because he was one of the people who helped mastermind the system. So yeah, that's why he was singled out, dum-dum.
And he wasn't banished from managing. The Mets made the decision. AJ Hinch got a job again because he'd won a World Series here. Right. Alex Cora regained his job because he won a World Series there. Carlos Beltran was a blank slate as a manager, and the Mets just decided optics or let's just go another direction.
Yeah. And I think, the flip side of that too is with Beltran, you're looking at Beltran and you say, oh, well, he didn't get the Mets didn't hire. Cora got fired. Nobody was really sad when Cora got fired in 2020 because he had a bad 2020 year. Like they had a down season in 2020. So him getting fired, I don't think really, I should say 2019, they had a down year. So the fans weren't really upset, but then when they sucked again in 2020, they were ready to hire him back and welcome him back with open arms in 2021, because it's like, well, at least he got us to the promised land once. Maybe he can do that again. And he really hasn't been able to replicate that again because maybe certain reasons, but I digress. Speaking of the Yankees, we had Michael King, Yankees reliever, had a fun quote over the weekend. He was on with, I want to say it was MLB Network Radio. And they were talking about the Astros. One of the quotes was, he said, there's no chance an Astros team can stop us when we're rolling. I don't even know where. I'm just going to give it to you. Where do you guys even want to go with this? Because this is, I'm sure in fairness, he probably wishes that he didn't say this now because of how viral it's gone. But what do you guys think about this quote?
Well, let's give Mr. King the benefit of the doubt and attribute it to youthful indiscretion, inexperience. Or he was having a fine year out of the bullpen for the Yankees, broke his arm in July, season-ending surgery. Maybe they worked in a partial lobotomy, a dual procedure. No chance. When the Astros went in and the first Javier started no-hitter game, weren't the Yankees like 97-2? When they were on a pretty good roll, right, running roughshod across Major League Baseball. And whether you want to look at the history of the game, there's no such thing as an unbeatable team. No role can be unstopped forever, right? Some seasons end, you win the World Series. Were the Astros on a roll and winning the World Series? I think the Astros were just great more than anything else. It's not that they were on a roll. So Michael King, get healthy, and I'm sure the Astros will remember you the next time you're on the mound. And if you get them out, good for you. The quote on its face, though, is just either stupid, or we can use it for every team in every sport. When a team is on a roll, it's tough to beat. But anyone who goes absolute, there's no chance the Astros could beat the Yankees when they're on a roll. Well, let's see the Yankees get on that roll then.
Yeah, these quotes kind of have a "We Want Houston" vibe just written all over them to me. I mean, that's what it kind of feels like. Oh, you want Houston?
Harmless stupidity.
Yeah. How did that work last time? Keep doing it. And all the New York, I'm seeing a lot of articles out of New York saying like, well, there's actually validity to these comments. It's really Cashman's fault for doing such a terrible job at the trade deadline, and they weren't set up to succeed. And if they had, it would have been a different story. I mean, it's, man, they will defend this stuff and just make up crap forever. It's easier than saying, hey, the Astros were just better than us this year, and hopefully we can get them next year. That's not in them. I feel like some of their fans are starting to be a little more like that now. They don't want to hear about the sign stealing. They don't want to hear about the excuses. A lot of it's the media, and really a lot of it's Brian Cashman. I mean, making comments that he's going to put down officially that they were the ALCS champs in 2019 based on the Cora comments. I mean, just to jump to these, next steps and leaps. It's the same thing with the Yankees saying a World Series got robbed from them because of the Astros, but wouldn't they have had to beat the Dodgers to get that World Series? I think you're missing a step there, guys. So anyway, a Yankee fan saying some absurd stuff, I'm not surprised, but Astros fans will remember, and the Astros will remember when they face them this coming year.
And Yankee fans certainly have noticed that James Click was the general manager of the World Series champion. Brian Cashman, the general manager of a team that has not been to a World Series in going on 14 seasons. His deal was up, but he got a new 3-year contract. So that's kind of stuck in Yankee fans' craws also.
Yeah, I'm very happy about that contract extension.
Well, apparently there would have been 2 championships or two champions in 2017 because the Dodgers would have won by default, and apparently the Yankees would have won by default, and maybe they would have had a champion versus champion unification bout to see who the real imaginary champion of 2017 was. I think it's funny too. I think Cashman, you guys correct me if I'm wrong here, or correct me in the comments here. Wasn't Cashman the one over the weekend who said that? Remind me of the quote. It was, the fans, the way the fans complain about what happened last year, they act as if we weren't 4 wins away from the World Series. So you take that kind of like attitude from the front office, and then you take these kind of comments from Michael King, and what you start to understand is a team that's not really taking accountability for the results in the field. And how far has this team gone down since the George Steinbrenner days, where you've got, George it was all in to win every year, and there was no excuse for losing. And now you've got, again, I could be wrong on the attribution of the quote, but I believe strongly that it was Cashman who said that we were only 4 wins away from the World Series. Right. You were. And you didn't get any wins in the second round of the play, and you barely got past the Guardians, only to get swept. So maybe it wasn't the amount of wins per se in the postseason. Maybe it was how you went out, and maybe that's what the fans are upset about. But again, as somewhat from the Houston perspective, please carry on, Brian Cashman. Please give this man a lifetime contract, because I like the cut of his jib. He does business good in New York, and I want him to keep doing business like this.
But let's not consider him the village idiot of general managers. Now, of course, with all their resources, you'd think anyone who's not a village idiot could field at least pretty good ball clubs, but they haven't had a losing season in 30 years.
Yeah.
Right. So to never dip. The Red Sox have finished last twice in the last 4 years. The Dodgers are on a decade-long run of averaging about 100 wins per year, but before that, they had some fallow years. The Yankees haven't in 30, but in New York and really anywhere, right? The Atlanta Braves, their dynasty, they only won 1 World Series while winning 14 straight division championships. But with the Yankees, the little extra kick in the gut on it, or a little lower, is that it's not that you haven't even won a World Series. It's you haven't been to a World Series. Mm-hmm. Since 2009, right? There's a dice roll element to playoff baseball. The best team in the regular season typically does not go on to win the World Series. But okay, let's finish off the dice roll analogy. If you're a Yankee fan, can you roll us 1-7, please, at some point? And the Yankees have been coming up craps in the postseason over and over and over, and it's been the Astros generally kicking the crap out of them, at least more so than any other team in this era of failure to get to a World Series.
Yeah, that's right. And one of the reasons that the Astros have constantly been contenders is because they have a good owner who really takes he's not taking the Hal Steinbrenner approach where he demands excellence, and that leads to turnover in the front office, which leads us to Dana Brown, the Astros' new GM. And so Dana Brown's new to the job. He's hopefully hitting the ground running behind the scenes and making decisions. And so as media, we get to prognosticate on what sort of decisions he's going to be making. And one such prognostication came from MLB. There's MLB Network from Chris. Was it Chris Young? Am I right on that? In fact, you know what, Josh, this was your story. Why don't you take this one and kind of set this up for us? Because there's a lot of moving parts in here as far as like comparisons go. So why don't you set us up for this one?
Yeah, you got it. He did a piece on MLB Network, just kind of the checklist that Dana Brown should be running through as he takes on this new job. And for him, there were 3 things on the checklist: lock up some young star players. The guys he mentioned was Jeremy Pena, Alex Bregman, Kyle Tucker, because Bregman has 2 more years left on his deal. The other one was sign your franchise player, Jose Altuve. He wants them to lock up Altuve till he's 38 years old. And then the other one was decide some pitchers to re-sign, whether it's Javier or Fromber, whichever way you want to go with that. And he just mentioned how Dana Brown was paying a lot of these guys early, these young players, and that they should implement a similar strategy with the Astros. So he kind of looked at the Matt Olson deal, 8 years, $168 million. He thought maybe something in that ballpark for Bregman might make sense. The Austin Riley deal, 10 years, $212 million. He thought maybe that's something that would be good for Kyle Tucker. And the one that really jumped out to me was the Michael Harris II's deal, 8 years at $72 million. And remember how young a player he is. He just won Rookie of the Year last year, and they already extended this guy, which he pointed to Jeremy Pena. So I wanted to bring that up. Would that be crazy to try and sign Pena to an extension after just this one great year?
I wouldn't say crazy, but I would say premature. I mean, he had a legendary postseason and he had a fine rookie season, but it's not like he was an elite player. I mean, Jeremy Pena wasn't a top 50 major league player in 2022. And not that there's anything wrong with that, right? He was a rookie. Not everyone's going to be Julio Rodriguez. But what's the rush? He's 5 full seasons away from free agency. He's not even salary arbitration eligible until 2025. If you want to make that kind of future bet, and the Braves have done it repeatedly, there also is a difference. Michael Harris Jr. is 21 years old. Pena is already 25. So if you're going to go 8-year contract with Pena, that's taking him to 32, 33. You weren't going to do that kind of length with Carlos Correa and his apparently ready to crumble ankle. Of the names and particularly the numbers that you mentioned some of there, Josh, Tucker and Riley, different positions, but guys in their mid-20s. Austin Riley's been an elite third baseman for 2 years now. Tucker's about there among right fielders. And if you were to go as long as 10 years, that would get him to 35. I'd prefer not go that long. But if you go longer, you're knocking down the average annual value. 10 years, 212. Just move a decimal point. That's $21 million per year. Kyle Tucker's probably thinking, well, that's kind of low. So then can you settle at 7 years, $24 million per year or something? I think there is a framework of comparison with those 2 guys in particular.
I find it interesting. We're not even talking about the Bregman part of it too, because I think that's going to be a question mark as far as. And
locking up Altuve till he's 38 would be silly.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what's going to happen with Altuve. Let's focus on the Pena. I think that is the interesting part. I'll talk about the Pena first. I think it just, before you say here's a 10-year deal, I think you need to really find out who is Jeremy Pena. And after 1 year, I think the jury's still out, because there was regular season Pena, who was an okay player. And then there was postseason Pena, who was outstanding and the MVP of 2 series, is on the way to a championship. And he, did he fix the mechanical issue? There was a leg kick that supposedly was throwing off his timing, and so he's eliminated that. And he hit like gangbusters. Does the league make a second adjustment on him? And this is how it goes with young players in the league, and we know this. The they break out. There's a book on them, and then we see if they make an adjustment. He seemingly made an adjustment in the postseason. Is there another adjustment by the league? Does the league counter that? And do they make an adjustment? I think it also has to do with where does he hit in the lineup too. If he's hitting lower in the lineup, maybe he doesn't see the same juicy pitches that he got to see regularly in the postseason when he was hitting in front of Yordan Alvarez, which we can talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, I think it's very, very interesting because all that to say is, could you get him cheaper this year if you lock him up? Maybe. But I think I'd rather know what I'm committing to if I'm the Astros by observing. There's no rush. He's under team control. Last year was his first season. You've got him locked up. There's no rush to lock him up and put yourself on the books for a lot of money for a long time.
I just think a fundamental point on this kind of topic, whether it's media, whether you're a hardcore fan, whether you're a fantasy player, you want to feel like you're in the game. So it's more fun to call for action, do something, do this, make that happen, rather than, well, leave well enough alone, bide your time. What's the rush? So in Jeremy Pena's case, what's the rush? They have bigger fish, more pressing fish to fry over the next 2-3 years than Jeremy Pena, who can't get to free agency until he'll be 30 years old after the 2027 season.
No, that's fair. I do see some positives. If you did try and do something like this, he's not going to cost you nearly as much as Kyle Tucker. Then if he is that guy from the playoffs and you get him at a bargain like this, if that is who Jeremy Pena is, that is a steal. That is a great bargain if you get him around, 8 years, $80 million, something like that. If he is that guy from the playoffs, you'd sign up for that every day. That would be amazing. But we don't know that. So I understand why people are a little hesitant, because you're right, Charlie, you don't have to do anything right now. So, why risk it? See how the season plays out, see how he performs. As Brandon mentioned, see, if there's more adjustments to be made. They don't have to do that right now. But yeah, it is interesting, though, that the Braves have this kind of strategy, and it seems to be working for them. And we're seeing their farm system. There's not a whole lot left, according to these ratings we were looking at, now that all these young guys are in the big leagues making an impact. And it's kind of like the Astros, with Hunter Brown and Jeremy Pena. All your super exciting young guys are making an impact on the big league roster now.
And the most likely answer is that Jeremy Pena is both of those guys. Because we talk about, Tucker, extending him, you're ready to give it. And look, for the right price, I would give Tucker a 10-year deal if he'd take it, at the right price. But Tucker's a perfect example. We talk about him being one of the greatest right fielders in the game right now, and he is. But what is his season like? It's a roller coaster, and he goes into these deep slumps that we explain with expected rates and this, that, and the other thing. We get into the deep analytics when we start explaining how he's not really in a slump. He's just hitting it to the wrong place right now. There's a lot of that talk. And so sometimes guys, you don't become a guy and then you're just that forever. We saw it with Yordan last year, although some of that may be health. Some of Tucker's may be explained by health too. We don't really know, but sometimes your timing gets off. Sometimes you're just in a bad place and you have to adjust. Sometimes there's a mechanical issue, whatever the case is. So Pena realistically may be both. The real question is, which player is he more for a longer period of time? And so we'll have to see, but yeah, I'm not really in a rush to lock him down anything. We're there. He also talked about, did Chris Young, about signing, one of their young pitchers. Big Papi was at the TriStar show over the weekend and was interviewed by Berman. And don't worry, Jack, I don't have a graphic for this, I don't think, but he said he should give the Astros should give him a 10-year deal. That I think is stupid. That's downright stupid. But I think locking up a guy like Fromber, that makes a lot of sense for the Astros. I'd much rather see that than a Pena deal right now.
There are probably numerous reasons David Ortiz is not and is unlikely to ever be a general manager. A 10-year contract for basically any pitcher is idiotic. Fromber's 28 years old.
Right.
So it's not like he's 22 and okay, we're gonna we're gonna lock in young Roger Clemens for the long term, or this Randy Johnson's figured it out. Let's do 10 years while he's 25 years old. And a player's gonna have a player's back, I guess. Pay them all, whatever they want.
Right.
If there was one guy, one Astro between now and opening day that we hear they've agreed to a 5-year contract extension with him, I might go with Fromber as the one that I feel best about. Right? It takes him from 28 to 32, 33 years old. He has a couple seasons of major league bona fides. And, Javier could just be a super duper star, or maybe he settles at a lower level than that. Garcia looks like a solid mid-rotation guy. I don't know if he has a leap in him to a 1 or a 2 starter. Urquidy, certainly a really good back of rotation guy. No one thinks he's a 1 or 2 starter. McCullers can tease you looking like a real ace, but the clock toward his next injury always seems to be ticking. So if I could secure the best bet to be a front of the rotation guy for me over the next 5 years, that's the way I would go, which isn't saying I'm telling Kyle Tucker to pound sand and Christian Javier not interested. But if we could hear one guy's locked in with the Astros for the next half decade, I would hope it's Fromber.
Yeah, I'd like to see Fromber too. So I don't have much to add to that. I'd like to see Fromber locked up. But hey, you got a couple more years. You don't have to rush it right now.
3 years.
Yeah. So, you can just wait it out, see how it goes. See how Jim Crane's feeling about this. You got a new GM. I'm sure he's got a lot of different new ideas and thoughts. So, let him get used to learning the ropes a little bit with the team and his players. And we'll see. I mean, everything's set up for him to have another amazing season, not just Fromber, but the team. So I might be inclined to just maybe wait for the first half of the season to develop before I'd want to make any contract offers.
Well, one of the things that's definitely going to be on Dana Brown's plate and imminently on his plate right now is, kind of filling in that final spot in the Astros lineup. We've heard, they're looking for utility infield help, and obviously the name out there is still Yuli Gurriel as a guy who with the Astros last year. Obviously he's still unsigned. We got a little bit more information towards the end of the week last week about Yuli's ask, and there was a lot of question marks about what he was asking for out on the market and why he wasn't signed yet. And there was a thought of, well, he's wanting too many years, he's asking too much money. Well, that got dispelled because basically what was reported by, I believe, John Heyman last week was that he's asking for just $3 million and some playing time. And that's been tough for him to find. So, Charlie, are Astros fans going to kill Dana Brown if Yuli's available out there for $3 million and they don't take advantage of it?
Well, that'd be silly and overreaction. There's a reason that Yuli's out there, and the best he can seek at this point is 1 year, $3 million. He certainly revived some in the postseason, but just as Jose Altuve starting the postseason 0 for 25 didn't mean he was washed up the end. It's not like Yuli Gurriel started chugging from a sustainable fountain of youth and he's going to be 2021 Yuli. What are you waiting for? I think Jose Abreu is secure enough and good enough that if you re-sign Yuli, he's not looking over his shoulder. But if you're the Astros and Abreu is the new kid in town, if a 36-year-old guy could be the new kid in town, has a 2 for 19 stretch, do you want to do, hey, play Yuli, put La Pena back in there? He also offers you really no middle infield flexibility. In an emergency, you could put him at second, but certainly not shortstop capable at this stage of his career. I guess in a pinch, he can stick almost anybody in left field, but he's not as utility friendly as maybe some other guys are. So if no one else signs and Brantley's not going to be ready, I mean, $3 million is penny ante stuff in today's game. But it's not like the Astros would be completely missing the boat if they were to pass on Yuli Gurriel, given 29 other teams at this point have done the same.
Yeah, I think Charlie hit on it with the utility role, idea that Dana Brown was on the flagship last week, and here's what he said when he was asked about Yuli: is the realistic thing, and we talked about this last week on Sports Map, but I wanted to bring it up again. So the quote, the realistic thing is we have Abreu at first base now. So at the end of the day, we have to look at maybe some other spots to strengthen the club. I think he's kind of telling you he sees Yuli as a first baseman and maybe not a lot more at this stage in his career. And if they're looking for a utility guy, they're going to want somebody that could play the outfield and play some of the middle infield spots a little more regularly. We talked about it. Yuli hasn't played any meaningful time at third base since 2019, back when Correa was hurt and Bregman had to kick over to shortstop. So it's just not something he's done a lot of lately. And the other thing we brought up, Dana Brown doesn't have loyalty to Yuli. He's new here. So I think it's either going to, if it's maybe Dusty can make it happen with Jim Crane, like, man, roll the dice. It's $3 million. What do we have to lose? So maybe it could go that way. It'll be interesting to see how much pull Dusty really has, if he really wants Yuli, or if we kind of talked about, is he just trying to show support of Yuli, with his comments. I think that'll be interesting to really know the truth there, because really only probably Dusty knows that.
I think loyalty is the only difference here, because I think all things being equal, there's a reason why he's unsigned. We talked about, we were kind of speculating here, what he would ask for, what he'd want. And, we had, I think it was earlier on in this podcast, we had in one of the earlier episodes, we had kind of a debate on what kind of monies he wants. Is he going to, no, it was you and John, right? You and John did a video on Sports Map talking about, is he going to want Mike, does he see himself as, Michael Brantley versus does he see himself as Aledmus Diaz? Well, guess what? He's not going to make either one of those salaries right now. And so I think there's a reason why he's hanging out there for $3 million. And it would only be an Astros fan who looks at him and says, yeah, you should take a flyer on him for $3 million, because that is the difference. Because all things being equal, you're not going to take a flyer. And that's coming from, I want him back on the team. Like I do. I'd like to see Yuli back on this team, but Jim Crane, Dana Brown, they don't suffer that sort of nostalgia, and they're going to look at this very pragmatically. And you got guys that you do need to extend, and you want to keep that powder dry just in case something happens, middle of the season, you need to make a trade. And they've got, somewhere around, depending on where they end up with, Tucker and Javier, they'll probably have somewhere around in the $22 to $25 million range underneath the luxury tax, or whatever you call it, the competitive balance tax. So I just don't see it happen. I don't know that you can, not when there's a David Hensley there, and before you guys blow me up in the comments, say David Hensley's no Yuli. I'm not even saying that. I'm just saying that, pragmatically speaking, that when you're talking about how do you build sustainable championship teams, cheap help is where the good teams separate themselves from the bad teams, because they get production out of their low cost positions. Like a team like the Jeremy Pena, we talked about him exploding out of nowhere, replacing Carlos Correa and being super productive in the postseason at a 50th of the cost of Carlos Correa. That is exactly what good teams do. We talk about Jim Crane taking a chance on Justin Verlander for $25 million. And then he goes over, then Justin leaves and goes to the Mets and gets paid, near double. That's what good teams do. You take advantage of a deal, and then when it costs too much to sustain, you let it go, because you have depth and you have the ability to absorb the loss. The Astros have been the prime example of how you run a good team and how you spend your money on things that Drayden McClain spent money on. He spent salary on players for what they had previously done and not for what they were going to do. More often than not, Jim Crane is paying guys he's paying them on that cheap contract for the upside, capitalizes on that upside. And then when guys are ready to turn that into a big contract, he says, go forth, blessed be ye, and go grab that bag. I'm quoting him directly on that. Mm-hmm. And that's how you do business in this league and win.
Well, with players in their 30s, you make it happen. Given long-term contracts, you're going to have a lot of regret and liabilities. I mean, Crane and whoever the general manager is, Dana Brown now, James Click before, Jeff Luhnow before, they have total immunity at this point, right? All they just have to, and it's not up there yet. They'll save that for opening night or maybe the second night, the 2022 World Series medal pennant. Wasn't up there with the college tournament over the weekend. But they can just point to that and say, any other questions? Look at American League champions and everything that they've accomplished. That doesn't mean they're infallible. And heaven forbid, Jose Abreu tumbles over the hill or tears a hamstring April 19th and Yuli Gurriel's off to a hot start with the Pittsburgh Pirates or something like that. Well, then you can trade a prospect and bring him back. But more than anything else, this speaks to the Astros as the good ship Lollipop, sailing straight back toward elite status. So last man on the roster is the only thing to quibble with. Because there's no who's going to be the shortstop, or my God, they have only 2 starting pitchers you're thinking are worth a damn going into this season, or where's the bullpen depth? Right? They basically have every box checked. So the 26th man on the roster, not worth chewing down the fingernails on. Over.
No, I mean, and obviously,
but it can be fun to do so as a fan.
Yeah, and it's a topic for February too. This is just what we're going to talk about. And you're talking about coming off a championship team. You're talking about one of the tent poles of a championship run that went 6 years. So it makes sense. Any final thoughts on this, Josh?
No, I think we covered it.
Okay. Before we get to our bottom line question kind of dovetails off of that, but we were talking about this before this show because MLB trade rumors had a thing about post Tommy John players that could impact 2023. They were kind of projecting it. One of those guys was Forrest Whitley. And for those who are newcomers to the channel or newcomers to Astros baseball in general, or only keep up with the major league team, Forrest Whitley was a highly touted pitching prospect for the Astros, fireball thrower, and has gone through he's had all sorts of troubles in his career, whether it's been PEDs, injury. It's been a pretty tough road for him and the minors since being a highly touted prospect. So we were kind of talking about, given that road, given the long and winding road and giving the highs and lows of it, for Forrest Whitley if he were to rebound and somehow make it to the big league club, Charlie, who's the best example of someone who's had a similar arc where they've been highly touted prospect and then hit rock bottom and then been able to rebound back up to a major league contributor? Because I couldn't think of any.
Quick precursor to that. The track record of taking high school pitchers in the first round overall is just bad. So Whitley would just be one more of those who didn't pan out if it does not work out for him. And he's 25 years old now. When you pitched it my way, and this guy's problems ran much deeper than Forrest Whitley's, but Matt Bush, who's 36 now and still hanging around the major leagues, part of the Milwaukee Brewers bullpen, had a couple of decent seasons with the Texas Rangers. He's had 2 Tommy John surgeries since finally getting a chance, but those were the trivial portions of Matt Bush's tale. This was the number 1 pick in the entire draft out of high school, a native San Diegan. The Padres took him number 1. Oh, the hometown hero. Shortstop, but apparently just an entitled, rhymes with sick. Troubled kid, bad kid, stuff about him from his high school days, just a punk. And then it got worse, and ultimately 3 DUIs later, one of them that he did not kill but severely injured a motorcyclist in Florida, like a 70-year-old motorcyclist. And Matt Bush wound up doing 3 years prison Right? Forrest Whitley probably feels like his career's been imprisoned, but no criminal element to it. And so Matt Bush, for all that, they wound up converting him from infielder to pitcher in the minors and made it to the major leagues. And he can probably still throw 95. So that was the kind of rock bottom and great comeback story. I don't know how great if you're that motorcyclist if he's hopefully still alive. But in Whitley's case, it'd be a tremendous story. Tremendous story. Obviously, some mistakes of his own doing, the PED stuff, but injuries, unless you're not taking care of your body, what are you going to do? But the real performance issues, right? The little bit that he pitched for the Space Cowboys last year, just no command, walking like 25 guys in 33 innings, giving up a hit per inning after not having pitched at all in 2020 and 2021. So that would be much more hope or wing and prayer than expectation that he could be a post Tommy John guy who can make it back. I mean, there's a long list of them who have, from Adam Wainwright still doing it with the Cardinals, to John Smoltz, to the original Tommy John himself, who pitched 15 years and wound up winning 288 games, the majority of those after he had the very first Tommy John surgery. But Forrest Whitley at this point, that would be buying a lottery ticket or betting on the long shot where you root for him, but you don't expect for him to get to that finish line.
And not to mention our current AL Cy Young reigning winner and Justin Verlander.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, he did it too. Yeah, it feels like with Whitley, it'd just be icing on the cake if you ever got anything out of him. It's not something that you can expect. It would be a great surprise if that works out. Astros are pretty loaded in that bullpen too. So even if he starts performing at a high level, will he even get an opportunity this season? Probably not. But, you hold out hope. It was never, he couldn't throw hard. You just wonder maybe more if he's one of those throwers than he really is a pitcher. It's Charlie mentioned, he's wild, and it just hadn't happened for him. It's been a shame, but it's not over yet. So we'll see.
What Forrest Whitley was hoped to be is seemingly on the cusp of what Hunter Brown might be.
Yeah. It is not over yet, and that is the crux of our bottom line question of the week. And I want to ask you guys, what percentage do you put on Forrest Whitley even making an appearance in the big leagues? So because I'm trying to set the bar real low. Our expectations are really low. So I'm trying to set it down to where there's at least some sort of challenge here. What percentage do you think Forrest Whitley makes the big leagues in some form? Not even that he's a good big league player, that he makes I'm gonna make it even easier. He doesn't even, I'm just saying he makes the Astros big league roster. I'm going to allow for him to wash out in the Astros system and show up someplace else. Forrest Whitley, what's the percentage you guys put on him in making the big leagues? And this is not just for my co-host on this. This is for the commenters. You guys comment as well. We will read your comments after I get their thoughts. Charlie, go.
That he throws a major league pitch.
Yep.
I'm just the hopeless optimist, so I'll go 51%, only because that is not an Astros only thing. At 25 years old, unless he blows his arm out, if the Astros, let him walk or he's included as a lesser light in a trade, that he throws a pitch in the major leagues, which is enough to get you lifetime eligibility for the Major League Baseball medical plan. I will, by the slightest of margins, go 51% that Forrest Whitley does throw a big league pitch at some point.
Yeah, I mean, even Mark Appel, I believe, got like a minor league deal a few weeks ago. So it's not over till it's over. I'm going to hover around 50% too, but just to be a little different, I'll say 45%. I'm a little more pessimistic than Charlie.
I'll be even more pessimistic. I'll say it's around the 30% range. And again, that's only because I left it like a giant out in him being able to, be traded or wash out of the Astro system and end up someplace else. Just because every team needs pitching, and maybe he shows enough to where he can, like you said, Appel's a great example of a guy who looked, washed and is still, still living in someone's system someplace. So, and so let me go ahead and read our responses from our chat. David Wagner puts 2% on that. And Jay Roberts says 20%, but for another team. Max Pitt says 40% he throws a pitch in MLB. We have a vote for, what's this? Doe Buffett. Oh, Doe Buffett. Oh, clever. I stumble on that every time. 15%. Good name, Doe Buffett. Jay Roberts says even Jason Lane threw an MLB pitch in the majors.
Yeah, he actually had a few good innings with the Padres.
Nice. I didn't know that. See, our readers or our chatters always here to educate me on these things. And I guess unless we have another one, that's going to be it for the bottom line, which means
his chances would be helped if we were still in the 40-man call-ups in September, where you can have all kinds of guys in the dugout. But with only a couple of call-ups to 28-man rosters, that will hurt his chances some.
And that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so.
I just thought it was really good to put it after what Charlie said. So everybody, that's the end of this week's podcast. Man, that really flew by. It must have been all of that Astro sign stealing crap at the beginning that took up so much time. I want to thank Charlie Palillo and Josh Jordan for joining me this afternoon. I want to thank the commenters for coming in and interacting with us today. Everyone who watches the videos, please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you prefer the audio version, remember it will be available on Monday evening, as it is every week. We will see you right here next week, Monday, 3 p.m. for another live edition of Stone Cold Stros. We will be so close to spring training at that point. It will be imminent. I think we'll be right there. But until next time, until next week, thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon. Go Stros.